This one goes out to all my lovely healers. It is time to heal that relationship with money and welcome it so that we can be the stewards of money that we need to be to care for the planet and all of our relations in an aligned, sacred, and clean way. Today, we have a conversation with Anjel B Hartwell, who's an internationally known author, artist, and evolutionary chemist. And she's going to help us to clean and clear our relationship with money by discovering the 5 ways we ward off wealth. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is greater than us, to the big mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably to a deeper understanding of ourselves and what we're doing here on earth, in connection with that larger presence, that timeless one that lives within. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love having these conversations week after week. Just sharing into the collective these new ideas, these higher frequency, these healed patterns to support the upliftment of us all as we move towards our great awakening. And I believe we're already in the middle of it. It's just that we're in the dust storm that gets kicked up when we start to shed the light down into those murky, dark corners and crevices. And one of the murkiest, darkest crevices can actually be the thing that we say we want the most, which is money, wealth, prosperity. We like to put pretty words on it, prosperity. But money has got so much stuff on it, so much gunky, icky stuff from our ancestry, from how money has been wired and used in the collective by the collective throughout generations and generations. And we get to clean it off. We get to dust it off. We get to bring love to it as healers. That's what we get to do. We get to do that. And so I want to welcome a beautiful guest today who is a sister Mesa carrier and my same lineage. Anjel Hartwell is here with us today. Welcome, Anjel.
Nice to be here, Carrie. So glad to have the opportunity to share this time with you and the audience.
It was so exciting when I met Anjel because she has a podcast called Wickedly Smart Women. And I resonated with that. So I was on it. It's not out yet, probably, but whenever it is, go over there. Check out her other interviews. Really, really beautiful. She's got a #1 podcast and she's won many awards for being a visionary leader. She's a visionary leader. And when I found out upon meeting this Anjel, I think you're an angel. When I met her, I was like, oh my God, she's a path walker. She's on the golden path. She's like me. We both have walked the medicine of the Caro rainbow ponchoed beautiful shamans in the Andes Mountains. Isn't that beautiful? So you're going to get to meet Anjel today and, be prepared for some shadow work. Be prepared for some exploration within yourself if you happen to still have any gunky money issues. And I know some of you do because I love you so much. And I'm connected with you. And I know that I've had gunky issues too. And I still got a few I'm working on. So let's learn together. Let's let Anjel show us what she knows. Welcome to the show, beautiful sister. I'm so grateful that you're here. And I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself so that we know like a snapshot of your journey. And then we'll get into because I know you have a lot to share with us, but I wanted to at least have people be able to meet you and know a little bit about your journey so that they know that you get it. You actually get it. And you're not just like fluffing them up with a bunch of hype, because there's a lot of people out there doing that. But this sister is part of my path. She's a path walker. So that's how I'm inviting her to talk to you guys. So share a little bit about your journey.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to start with I grew up in an alcoholic household. My dad was an alcoholic, raging, violent, abusive, physically, emotionally, mentally, not sexually, thankfully, knock on wood. My mom was probably undiagnosed with some kind of maybe bipolar disorder. So it was just a very tumultuous, the wounded warrior childhood, right? And I spent the first 20 years of my career in the real estate business. At the end of that career, I was the national chairperson of my trade association. I was building with two partners, 51 single family houses, 56 apartments, and an office building. It was a multi-million-dollar project, award-winning. I had about $100 million of real estate under my management in the portfolio that I was managing. And then I had a spiritual awakening. And the spiritual awakening kind of a mountain initiated me. I'm just going to say a mountain initiated
Was
me.
it in Peru?
No, it was here in New Hampshire where I live. Loon Mountain initiated me. I injured my knee in early 2001 skiing. And as a result of that injury, I ended up after physical therapy, at the end of physical therapy, I asked the physical therapist, could I take a yoga class? And he said, yes, as long as it doesn't hurt. If something hurts, just don't do it. So I started yoga, and within probably a month or so of starting yoga, I became aware that I could not even look down at my heart. Like the yoga teacher was saying, look down at your heart when we were in final Shavasana, and I couldn't do it. And about 4 months in, she took us outside, and we had a Sunday in the park yoga class. And I was in final Shavasana under this giant oak tree in the park, and my third eye burst open. And I could see angelic beings going up and down this golden white staircase and golden white orbs of light. And when I sat up and opened my physical eyes, everyone in the park was a golden white orb of light. And this lingered. I got in the car and all the cars going down the street were golden white orbs of light. And I pulled into my driveway and I looked at my neighbors and they were golden white orbs of light. And I, about 2 hours in, I was like, am I going to just be seeing like this from now on? So that was the very first spiritual awakening. And within a year of that, I had chosen to leave my marriage and then chosen to leave my business partners and, leave the real estate industry. My oldest partner said to me, what are you going to do? And what fell out of my mouth was, I'm going to be a crystal healer. And I had no idea what I was talking about. No idea what I was talking about. And he looked at me like I had three heads, but it was very clear to me that I needed to go. So about a month after that, when I told him I was leaving, I had my first crystal healing. About a month or two after that, I figured I better get one so I could actually experience it.
Oh, you'd never actually had a crystal healing before?
No. I had started during the divorce period. I had started making jewelry with natural stones. And so what I know now in retrospect is the stones were working with me as I was making the jewelry. And if I went back and looked, you could see I was healing. The stones were working with me to heal me. And so I had gotten a book about crystal healing and I was reading it and I was making this jewelry called Energems. It was my first foray into doing my own thing. And I had made more jewelry than a mother could love. I had hundreds of pieces of jewelry. When I said that to him, I had been making jewelry for a while. So about a year through the divorce process. So it wasn't like I didn't know at all anything. I mean, at that point, I was aware that crystals could be allies in healing. And so I said, it literally fell out of my mouth, Carrie. It wasn't something that was planned when he said, what are you going to do?
Those kind of things that you even look wide-eyed about yourself.
Exactly. It's like, what? What just came out of my mouth? So yeah, probably about 2.5 months after that, 3 months after that, I had my first crystal healing. It was right around my birthday. So it was February of 2003. And the woman who did the crystal healing, I mean, now I know, I didn't know then. I was just wide-eyed. She was a medicine carrier and she was, somebody who had been trained by Carlos Castaneda and had been trained by Alberto Villoldo when Alberto was nobody. When he just first came out of doing the anthropological work that he had been doing. And so this woman did a healing and I'm on the table, face down on the table. She's spitting on me and rattling and putting rocks on me. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Right. Face down on the table. And all of a sudden, into my vision, I saw this medicine man up on a tree that was dressed all in like parrot like feathers and stuff. And he said, she's your teacher, into my awareness. And I like lifted my head off the table and I turned and looked at her and I was like, you're my teacher. It was pretty wild.
That's cool.
Yeah. So she was at a point where she had just made a crystal healing curriculum. So I signed up for her crystal healing. I was her very first, me and one other woman were her very first crystal healing students. And when I got through with that, she asked if I wanted to apprentice to her as a shaman. And I had no idea what the hell she was talking about. And I don't do research. I just was like, yes, I'm supposed to do this. So I said, yes. So that's the story of like the awakening. And over the course of the next, that was 2003, right? So it's been 22 years. I've been through a wide variety of initiations, including ultimately going through the medicine wheel with her, going into the Healing the Light Body School, getting the Moonai Key, getting all the training in the Healing Light Body School and being certified as a Healing the Light Body practitioner, Reiki. I'm naturally ordained as a sound healer. I can use the sound of my voice and intent to activate latent codes of light in people's DNA. And I then got into having my own art gallery and healing arts center for a few years. And then that went away. And then I ended up in the online space. And so I've been in the online space since 2008. And the calling when I got into the online space was to be a role model and a teacher and a mentor and a guide for people who were called, like I was, out of an old life and ready to be walking that path of transformation to step into their own calling. And not only that, but to create businesses and structures so that they could financially thrive, answering the spiritual call.
Yeah, which is a thing because as it turns out, there's a lot of ancestral gunky stuff around being a healer of any kind. And turns out being a woman and having money. So there's a lot of stuff with all of that. So I know that you're going to share some standard ways that we as healers, as women, ward off wealth. Like we actually push it away. And I'm suspecting it has something to do with the energy. But what I want to say is like, I'm excited to learn this because when I see women that are opening their spiritual gifts and learning how to stand in their power and connect with natural forces, right? And be a force for good. But then I see them acting from a place of powerlessness in my perspective, like feeling powerless with what's going on in the collective. And so there's been like one thing I saw on social is a lot of women are gathering together to place a hex on the patriarchy, that kind of thing. I personally, that's not my path because I feel like we can operate with our gifts from an empowered space and we can focus on ourselves and on healing ourselves. And then we don't need to, sort of do that victim rescuer perpetrator model, which I know we're on the same page with that because of the training that we've had with Alberto Vialdo, is to always look at our own shadow first and to not project it out, onto the world, to resolve everything inside rather than sort of like doing something on the outside to fix a problem that we're having. Right. So I know that we're going to be having a good discussion today about what are some things that we can work on the inside to change the outer reality.
Yeah. Beautiful. So I want to begin the conversation by giving my definition of wealth. For me, wealth is the sum total of all of the resources that we have at our disposal, money being one of them. And I like to use the word thief to enunciate and name off those resources because most of the time we are stealing from ourselves in one or more of these areas. So the 5 resources are time, health, imagination, which is the marriage of our intellect and our intuition, the ecosystem of exchange, and fun with our friends, family, and fellow travelers on the path. So all of those resources together create wealth, and money shows up in only one of those areas, and that's the ecosystem of exchange. And even within that area, the ecosystem of exchange, money is only a part of it. So you and I are in an ecosystem of exchange where we exchanged time on each other's podcasts, right? No money was exchanged there, but we're in this ecosystem of exchange with one another. So money actually is about 10% of this whole conversation, maybe 15, right? Of this whole cosmology that I have on what defines wealth. And when we are living a wealthy life, we are in a sacred relationship with all of these resources, and we're not stealing from one or the other to compensate. And, I'll out myself. One of the things that happened for me as I was going through my own journey is when I was spiritually awakened, I was so on fire to serve that I ignored or stole from. I literally stole from my family. My relationship with my son ended up being very difficult for a while. And I was so focused on the work and getting the work out there into the world. And it was an escape for me to a certain extent from having to step into confronting and facing what was going on in that relationship. So when we are talking about wealth and a wealthy life, we want to be really focused on not only the ways that we're warding off wealth, but, kind of holding this larger umbrella picture of how am I spending my time? Is my health good? Am I drawing on my imagination and draining myself creatively without compensation, without fair compensation financially? So we need to look at the whole definition of wealth before we dive into the ways we ward it off.
I love that you provided that ecosystem of the larger wealth or prosperity that we experience. And it's interesting how in a capitalistic society that's inverted. Pretty much everybody thinks the biggest, most important, only thing, just about the only thing is money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all the things that go along with money or what they think generates money, like status or accolades or, all the steps you've got to take to get money, in order to be seen as somebody who gets money. And then we get like 1,000 little 3-letter acronyms after our names trying to earn all of those things. Right. So yeah, really good intro to that conversation. So where do you want to go next?
Yeah, well, I want to pick up on that and also say that, yes, it is a little bit inverted or maybe a lot bit inverted. And as we step into the healing, the propensity that I've seen, especially among healers, is to then throw the baby out with the bathwater and just, say, oh, I don't want anything to do with money. And that is actually not in Aini either.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And another little ripple on that is that as we step in shamanically as healers, earth-based spirituality as healers, there's that additional thrust of that refusal to incorporate money because there's this ancestral anger from Native American populations towards European colonizing populations, where we're going to reject your entire structure. We're going to reject everything you created as like Watiko, as greed, so there's this wanting to separate, have a clean demarcation between this sacred healing work, which is sacred, and then making money like the sort of evil that would taint what is sacred, instead of money as a gift of Aini towards the sacred healing work.
Well, or instead of money being sacred too, if we hold the vision of being in relationship with the sacred is all that is. And all that is includes money. And, when we talk also about the colonizers, something that I learned from a woman who was an early person on my path of awakening and who was in my store back when I had my art gallery and healing arts center, this very brilliant woman, she calls herself the race healer. She's kind of pretty much retired at this point. But one of the things that she taught me that I didn't really know, I knew, but I didn't really know it, is that most of the colonizers who came here were actually, it wasn't the landed gentry. It wasn't the aristocrats that came here. it was the people who were the outcasts of the European society that ended up coming here. And then part of the challenge is that the white Europeans ended up, as it's playing out right now, it looks like they're trying to create another aristocracy that's, even in monarchy is being tossed around in the current events in the current administration, we'll say. The word monarchy is being tossed around, and not lightly, you know what I mean? So it's really interesting how colonizers were oppressed and then have reversed that oppression onto others, onto the indigenous people, onto the African American people, onto all of the people that have been oppressed by the colonizers. But it's like they took the wounds that they carried and just delivered them to others. And now they're constructing or reconstructing the same dynamic that they left Europe to avoid and get away from. So it's very complicated time we're in right now. And our work as pathwalkers is to observe the story and step into where we can have an effect and create change, and then pull ourselves back out again. And one way that we pull ourselves back out again is by really looking at how we ourselves are warding off wealth, and how we ourselves are actually taking and projecting onto money in ways that are actually detrimental to our calling, right? Because the more money that we actually allow in, the more we actually have resources to create the change for the better that we feel that we've been called to do. So it's an important topic.
Yeah. And it's not the money that's at issue. It's the person that wields the money. It's kind of like we are seeing an example of somebody wielding 60, 70, 80 billion dollars, but giving back nowhere. It's all hoarded for himself, and apparently not even helping his children who need support right now with medical expenses. And so you have to look at that and go, that's an extreme on one side of the me-centric matrix, right? And that person, that amount of wealth in that person's pocket, you can see what's happening with that. But then you might then go, well, I don't want to be like that. So, well, okay, but does that mean you wouldn't wield 60, 70, 80 billion dollars towards good causes like supporting the earth, regenerating our forests, supporting the Amazon, like cleaning up the wildlife and supporting people who are homeless, and giving things to people and charities and organizations that are creating beneficial change in the world. So it's not the money, it's the person that wields the money, and their own psychology is the driver of what happens with that money once it's in their possession.
Exactly. And so let's talk now about what I've seen with myself. So I'm going to out myself, but also many of my clients and many of my colleagues in the healing realm. These are the 5 ways that I've seen all of us ward off wealth. And the number one way is worry. So when I see worry, when I'm looking at a client or a colleague, I see this dark gray, musty smelling, nasty army blanket wrapped around whatever the person is worried about, right? And so if you're worried about money, and what's really interesting is there are people who have more than enough money to take care of themselves and their family for generations to come, and they still are carrying worry about money, right? And there are other people who have very little in terms of financial resources, and they don't worry. They're just like, oh, yeah, I'll be fine. Tomorrow's another day. You know what I mean? And the vast difference between the two, you can palpably feel, and you can also acknowledge that those people with all that money that are hoarding, that worry is probably like the number one thing in their, what they're warding off here, though, is not necessarily the money part of wealth, right? Remember our definition, our bigger umbrella definition of wealth. These people who have tons of money are not healthy. They're not mentally healthy. They're not spiritually healthy. They're not well. To be that singularly focused on how much more can I accumulate when I have $80 billion, that's not well. There's no health there. That's not balanced.
Actually psychotic and sociopathic. And, so it's based in deep wounding, right? Because if there is a giant hole inside your heart that said, And it got there however it got there. You had a mother that couldn't provide love to you in the way that you needed it, or you were teased as a kid for being autistic, or you were shunned by other kids for whatever reason, or you were ostracized by your father, so any one of those things could have happened and probably did happen in some of these cases. And the result of that is this really deep aching in the heart, this unfillable void that is starving for love. And the thing that every person has to learn is that is unfillable from outside of yourself. The only place that can ever be filled is from your own soul, your own spirit. And the further you push that away through your actions, the worse it gets.
And the bigger the
hunger.
The bigger the hunger, the bigger the hole, and the bigger the hoard, right?
Yeah.
The hole and the hoard.
This person must have done some really bad stuff. I'm just saying.
Well,
in another life,
Yeah, and we aren't even talking yet about the past lives. I mean, from my perspective, I'm seeing the Atlantean timeline trying to play itself out again and get healed here as well. So anyway, worry is one of the first ways that we ward off wealth. Withdrawing is the second way. So what does withdrawing look like? Well, let's say you're a healer and you have your own business and you come and listen to this podcast and you start to get excited and you start to think, oh my God, maybe I need to go work with Carrie, or maybe I need to go work with Angel. And you're like feeling the divine inspiration and you're excited and you're activated to say yes and move into another level of your own initiation. And then all of a sudden, the podcast is over and you turn away and you pull back and you just withdraw all of your energy and you close off to the opportunity, right? So there's opportunities all the time to work with Carrie. There's opportunities that I offer to work with me. And there are opportunities that many people out there are offering all the time. We can offer opportunities to help build and grow your business. We can offer opportunities to increase your capacity to navigate the unknown. We can offer opportunities to be healthy with your nutrition. There's endless opportunity, but when you withdraw, you're taking yourself out of the game, essentially. You're pulling yourself out of the game. And it's going to be incredibly difficult to have a wealthy life if you are pulling back all the time.
Yeah, I want to affirm that withdrawing. I've seen so many people do that. And for me as a guide, it's just so upsetting to watch it because I know what's on the other side of moving through the discomfort, right? I know what happens beyond the withdrawal. I know what happens when you lean in instead of go away. I know what happens when you say yes to the work rather than disappear. And so I know it's real because I see it all the time, again and again and again and again and again. People that lean in, heal, and open up greater potentials for themselves. And people who withdraw, close in on themselves, and their potentials get smaller and smaller. And the money gets trickledy and trickledy and trickledy. It's like the only way that we can move forward is by embracing the change, right? And I know there's a lot involved in that, because if you've been telling the same story about your life for decades, right? And it gets you some like pity from other people or, some kind of buy-in, you'll be less likely to want to get rid of that, right? Because you're getting your needs met. The underlying needs are being met by that identity and that story. And that's why we were taught how to change our story, let go of our identification, be willing to change the narrative that we say about ourselves, be willing to go into new territory, right? And change the story up, which means you've got to say yes when the opportunity presents itself instead of withdrawing.
Exactly. All right. Third way that we ward off wealth is waffling. And I'll use another example of let's imagine that we're at a live event and it's a live event talking about business building. And the person on the stage makes the offer and it's like a $10,000 offer to work with that person for 3 months, let's say. And we're sitting there in the audience and we're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed for my business. This is exactly what I've been praying for. This is exactly the right person. I can just feel it. And then we take and run to the ladies' room for a quick break. And our best friend calls us up on the phone and says, hey, that Mediterranean cruise that we've been waiting for years and years and years to have the price go down to $10,000? It's $10,000 right now. And now we have entrepreneurship, cruise ship, entrepreneurship, cruise ship, entrepreneurship, cruise ship. and we make no decisions and both ships sail. So that's waffling, not being able to make a decision.
Yeah, that one's another tough one because it's really about trusting yourself, which I feel like there's been such deep conditioning for women, especially to distrust themselves, to think that they're crazy when they have that insight and they go, oh my God, I know this is true. I got the synchronistic signs. I feel it in my body. My heart's wide open. I know this is a yes. And then we get tested, right? Because not to throw us off track, but to help us stick to what we know, right? To strengthen that resolve to go after what we know is true in our own hearts. And so, yeah, those temptations come up, right? Those temptations and to distract and go off on, the easier path, which is never the easier path, ever the easier path, ever, ever. Can I say that enough? Ever.
Say it together. Ever.
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 Ever, ever.
Ever,
So,
ever.
Never, ever, ever the easiest path. The easier path is sticking to your guns and saying, yes, this is what is right for me. My heart told me I know it's right. I don't know how it's going to happen. I'm just going to say yes and let the how be sorted.
Yeah.
Let the how be sorted.
When I first got into the online space and started investing in myself, I went to this event and I got the tingle and I made an investment because I said I wasn't expecting this offer from the stage. And I was like, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to invest in something before I leave here. Because I was like, I know I have to invest in myself. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is by saying yes to those tingles and saying yes to that divine inspiration, not only are we saying yes to the divine and thereby opening up many more additional opportunities to receive in that way, to receive that guidance, to receive, we begin to strengthen our capacity to receive clearer and clearer and clearer guidance. But we also begin the process, especially when we're investing in ourselves and in our calling and in the healing journey that we're on, certainly the business that we decide we're going to start to serve in a bigger way in the world. Then what we're also doing is we're voting yes for ourselves. Instead of sticking the money in the bank, where the bank is going to take your money and use it. The bank is using your money. If you think your money is at the bank, you got another thing coming. You better go look on Google and see where your money actually is. So the bank is actually taking your money and using it and investing it. When you take your money and invest it in yourself, you are building an ability to trust yourself and to affirm yourself again and again and again and again and again. And I've invested probably $1 million at this point in myself, in my self-development, in my business development. And every time that I get that tingle that it's time to invest, I go and do the investment. Sometimes I do it using credit. Sometimes at one point in my journey, I used my son's college fund because the message was, we need to do this. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to use the college fund to do this. And every single time, sometimes I don't necessarily see the why. I don't necessarily see the why. But then when I trust my knowing, I've deepened and strengthened my connection with the divine. So I'm going to get more knowing. And I also then get shown things that weren't even on my radar screen. So again, I'll use myself as an example. There was a time where I was at this event and it was a $10,000 investment. And I had already been investing in myself for 5 years in the business building realm. And I was with a very high, I was already in a very highly invested mastermind. I took my home equity to invest in this mastermind. And I was at this other event where this woman made a $10,000 offer. And my upstairs team was like, you need to take this offer. I was like, what? Why am I taking this offer? This is like going to Sears Essentials after I've been shopping at Nordstrom's. It was like, why would I want to even work with this person? And it was very strong and it was very clear. And so I was like, okay, I put the $10,000 on the table on the credit card. And within 60 days, I had one 15-minute conversation with not the woman who I invested in, but her head coach. One 15-minute conversation that was worth the entire $10,000 investment. So part of what we also need to change when we're thinking about money, especially when we're stepping into the unknown and we're charting new territory and we're creating out of nothing, stuff that we've never seen before, businesses we've never seen before, modalities we've never seen before. We're literally cutting the edge here. We have to also transcend the time for money equation, right? Because literally, I paid $10,000 and got the entire value in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. So the next W is
That's
whining.
amazing.
Yeah.
Whining. Did you say whining?
Yeah, whining.
Whining.
Yeah. I'll let you follow up on that point, on the point I just made, and then we'll talk about whining.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because I also invested like all of my 401k that I got from all those decades. I worked high tech and I was doing high tech consulting and I had been squirreling money away. And I was told the same thing, like, you need to go to the Four Winds, you need to go to Peru, you need to get this training, you need to get that training, you need to do these things. And I was like, I'm going to be using up like all of my security. And at the end of the day, I was like, does that stuff make me secure? No, because what gave me security in myself was all of that deep dive, energetic work, ancestral clearing work, soul past clearing work, and all the knowledge to do that with other people. That's what gave me long-term security, was stepping in to be the medicine person I'm here to be for the planet. That's like what gave me security. So it's like, yeah, we've got to decondition how we think about things. And at the same time, I want to just throw out there a little bit of plug for, human design, in really studying your human design chart and understanding your intuition type, because some people are emotional processors. So it's not a good idea to make a decision in the middle of your emotional wave when you're all excited, like, yeah, this is exactly right. And then just throw your credit card down. You got to actually give yourself time to get back down to like level, so that you go on the ups and then the downs, and then you come and back in the center. And then you get to that quiet place where you know the truth, where you know the answer, versus the splenic that just knows yes, no. And I just know. And then don't second guess yourself. You already got the answer. So we're all built a little bit differently in that. So I want to just fling that out there too. That's where like your self-discovery work and how your intuition works and following that, as well as saying yes when it's a clear yes, however that shows up for you. That's what we need to be doing at this time. We're powerful when we do that, women. We're so powerful. I just wanted to throw that in there because that was lingering on my radar as something to mention. And thank you so much. So the next part is whining. I've whined a lot. Yeah. So not just with bottles.
Let me talk about whining. But before I talk about whining, let me go back and talk about security and also human design. So yeah, I learned a little later that I'm an emotional authority. And so I made a lot of like, here you go, here you go, here you go. And at the end of the day, I trust that all of the decisions I made were the highest and best at the time. I did the best that I could at the time that I made those decisions. And now I have the stories that go along with those decisions. And once I got tuned into the human design thing, I'm now much less likely to make the snap decision, unless it feels like such a solid yes that I just do it anyway. And then I want to talk about security. So you mentioned the 401k being security, right? Well, the 401k, what are they doing with the 401k? They're investing in some other companies, right? And so after we get the security that we find in doing these deep personal dives, some of you may be called, like I was, like Carrie was, to then set up a business to serve into this calling. The second best security that you can have after having this internal security is self-employment. Because when you become self-employed, the security literally rests with you, right? It's up to me to make the decisions and take the actions that are going to create sales and create income and create flow. And that's why it's so important for us to not only be calculating what we personally need, but when you step into doing a business, we definitely want to be looking at, and this is something I help my clients with, I help them with the math, right? We want to be looking at what does it actually take for us to thrive by only doing what we're here to do, not being in the back end, figuring out what hashtag and tag we want on the email that has this subject line and it's in that little section of our customer service technology stack, or figuring out how to edit a podcast. I have 2 podcasts. I pay an editor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And the reason I pay an editor is because I am well paid and my business is well paid for what I offer. And so we want to be actually looking at our monetary outflow when we are called into doing our own business as both our inflow and our outflow. Our ability to create inflow is our security, and the outflow is what we utilize to build the structures to let our message and our mission continue to grow and thrive and prosper and perhaps even live on beyond us. So now let's get to whining. So whining is the fourth way that we ward off wealth, and usually it's over wine. And so what happens when we're whining over wine is two things. First, when we're whining, we are actually in a negative mindset and we are basically bitching and moaning and complaining. We're not solution focused. We're energizing the problem rather than enticing the solution. And when we're whining over wine, or in the case of the boys, it's belly aching over beer, right? When we're whining over wine, we are also usually with a group of people who are giving us an audience and energizing the negative storyline. And the wine is actually lowering our consciousness state as well. So when we're whining over wine, the whole thing is non-productive. It's not life affirming in any way, shape, or form. And it's a form of just getting negative attention. And so what we want to do is to also remember that if there is something that's a challenge, there are places and spaces where you can go and invest to get help for that challenge, to get help for that. That's why you pay for a coach or a consultant or a training that's going to help you to elevate to the next level. And if it's not working in some way, you bring that to that mentor or that coach or that consultant, and they're going to hold the space for you to express the data. I tried this and it didn't work. I tried this and it didn't work. I tried this and it didn't work. And this is the data. Then they can look with you and collaborate to discern, okay, well, let's try this instead, because it's all a big, gigantic experiment. But if you go to your coach or your consultant, even, the best coaches and consultants are not going to tolerate any kind of whining at all. They might give you like 2 seconds to whine a little bit, and then they're like getting you, recalibrated to be focused on the vision instead of just having a pity party for yourself. So the fourth way that we ward off wealth is whining.
Yes, I've done plenty of whining in my time. Whine, whine, whine. And then like whining at home and then whining and then going and whining at the therapist's office for 2 decades weekly. Whining creates more of the same in my experience. But there is like a point where you can use the story to get into the whining space and then stop telling the story and just feel the feelings. That's a fast track to shifting it, because it lives someplace inside you. Like it lives inside the tissues. It's got stuck somewhere in some broken record inside your brain or in your heart or someplace. And, if you can get it started and then feel the feelings and let it feel without speaking another word, that's the most potent. It's so hard not to speak the words though, when you're really like in the spot. But if you can maintain not speaking it anymore and like cut it off mid-sentence, it's so powerful. It can shift like really fast for forever. So
yeah. I mean, in every one of these things, there's trapped energy. In every
it's trapped energy, yeah.
And once we recognize it, acknowledge it, and liberate it, then we have power. We have power and life force to be able to create, to be the creators that we came here to be. So the last way that we ward off wealth is waiting on. And waiting on comes in 2 flavors. Flavor number 1 is waiting on everybody else like you are Cinderella and you're taking care of all your ugly stepsisters. Now, I did this when I was first in that mastermind that I invested my home equity in. I learned from the mentor, and then I was like in this big group of all these other people. And I see this happen all the time in these big groups with all these other people. And they were struggling. And so I was helping that lady and I was helping that lady and nobody was paying me to help these people. They were all paying the mastermind host to be learning from her. And I spent years of my life when I could have been focused on my business. And I abdicated my role as the owner of my own business in service to waiting on everybody else in this group, because there was this part of me that was like, we all need to succeed together and rise up together. And was martyring myself, literally martyring myself and sacrificing myself to, quote unquote, make that happen. And eventually, I got clued in that I was doing that and realized that there was plenty of people that I could make offers to in that group. And ended up making some lovely offers and creating some significant changes for people in that group because, that was what I needed to do instead of waiting on people. When you wait on people and you try and take care of it for them, they're not going to learn anyway, and it's not going to stick. So that's one way that we wait on. And the other way that we wait on is we wait on the handsome prince to come and rescue us with his giant snorting steed and carry us off into the sunset and set us up in the castle in our beautiful tower and never have to worry again because, we've been waiting on this prince forever, right? And so we just, especially women, we literally were programmed from childhood to look at Snow White, sleeping in her glass coffin and Cinderella, waiting for the glass slipper guy to show up. And that is going to ward off wealth because the attitude of I require rescuing in some way is what is one side of the waiting on is you're playing the role of the rescuer. The other side of waiting on is you're playing the role of waiting to be rescued, waiting on.
Yeah, that's the same thing as like expecting Jesus to come down and solve all of your problems. Same kind of thing, waiting for spirit to give you the person that has all the answers for you and make it all happen. But there's agency in all of this manifestation stuff. And I love when people say, well, it must not have been meant to be because it didn't just fall into my lap. And that's when I say, actually, there's agency. Like it did fall into your lap. You got the insight that you needed to go to this meeting or that meeting or like drive over here or go listen to this or put some money down on this, or you got the insight. If you didn't do it, then, then you're not actually being part of the matter. It's co-creation. Part of the co is you and part of it is spirit.
That's right.
Yes.
You cannot sit on the couch eating bonbons all day, watching soap operas and think that, you're going to turn into some wealthy, powerful, impact producing, world changing, healing force.
Or that it's going to be comfortable the whole time. Because if you're really in transformation work, it's not comfortable, guys. Like it is not comfortable. I get comfortable with discomfort and then we'll succeed. That's beautiful. Right. Oh my God. So I know that you have a free gift, right? Like that helps explain all this or that gives you a quiz, right? Tell us about the quiz.
Yeah. So we have a fun little quiz. You can get it at quiz.wealthylifementor.com. And it's our wealthy life readiness quiz. So you'll go through the quiz and it will score you in a variety of areas across these resources that we've talked about: the time, the health, the imagination, which is the marriage of intellect and intuition, the ecosystem of exchange, and the fun with your friends, family, and fellow travelers. It assesses you across all of those areas, and then it will give you a score of what your wealthy life readiness is, and some additional information that you can digest. And if it becomes clear that you want further support to be better and more ready to welcome a wealthy life, then there are also some offers on the back end of that you can take a look at. Consider.
Beautiful. Okay. So that link is going to be in the show notes, everybody. So you'll be able to click and go get your quiz, Wealthy Life Mentor, get your results and take a look at the offers. And remember, if you have a yes, it's a yes. Follow the yes, but kind of like follow the yellow brick road. Mm-hmm. Follow that yellow brick road. I wanted to ask you also if there's anything else that you want to offer today, like you want to share any little bit of wisdom that's coming to you as we wrap, because people are going through a lot right now and, there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of not sureness, like what do we do now? Things are falling apart, crumbling down around us. And now we're going to talk about being even more adventurous and taking risks and saying yes can we really do that with our money? Like, what's your answer to that?
Well, again, we talked about security. You talked about security. I believe it was the Caro. It could have been somebody else, but I believe it was the Caro that when asked, what can we do to be safe? Where can we go to be safe? And the Caro, or there were some medicine people who said, there's not going to be any safe places to go. There's no safe places to go. You need to be a safe person. You need to be a safe person. And how do you become a safe person? You become a safe person by becoming, being in your own agency. If you get the ping to say yes, you say yes. If you are told to invest in something and you don't have any cash in the bank, but you've got credit, you use the credit. If you're told to invest in something like Carrie was, you need to take it out of your 401k. Well, when you take money out of your 401k, you're actually pulling it out of the dying matrix. So here's your choice. You can leave your money in the dying matrix, or you can pull it out and invest in yourself, right? And you can affirm with your actions, utilizing the resources that you have, because we are in this great turning point, and all of these resources are congealed over here in this dying paradigm. They're going to be freed up. And as those are freed up, the people who prepare themselves to welcome those resources, to trust themselves enough to be good stewards of those resources, to be connected with sacred wisdom and guidance, and to be on the path. If those people aren't willingly opening themselves up to these resources to be stewarded, where are they going to go? Where are those resources going to go? Right? And so if there's one last thing that I would say is invest in yourself, invest in your calling, and remember that the force that keeps the earth turning is what's keeping you alive. And it's far greater than any of these stories or matrices that we jump in and out of from day to day and year to year and country to country and lifetime to lifetime.
I love that. Yeah. Pull your power back from the matrix, you guys. Like, don't let that matrix take away your dreams, steal your knowledge inside yourself of what you know is right for you. Don't let it delay you on your path, because as soon as you say yes, the divine is here, even though the matrix is here too. Like, the divine is still here too, and it's bigger than the matrix. And so when you say yes to your divine path, you just say yes to your divine calling, you say yes when you get the spidey tingles, yeah, you're going to be better off no matter what happens. And yeah, I do have like a couple grand left in one of the account that I drained. And I was like thinking, I'm just going to go get it out. Like, I'm not going to leave it in there, because what's the point? Like, that whole idea I think is just going away, and we're going to return. We're going to go to something way more sacred, community, communal, loving support. I just feel like it's going to be a really different reality, and it's going to be pretty awesome. It's in the process. I see little ways that it's already being formed in different groups that I engage in. Already right here, right now is, prosperity consciousness. It's already happening, and it's just happening quietly. It's not as loud.
And we get to create the wealthy life by design that we are here to live and embody and be role models for those people who are kind of waking up behind us. You know what I mean? There are people going through now what I went through in 2001 when I had that spiritual awakening under the oak tree, right?
There you go.
And they're looking for leaders to help them to navigate their path. And so I know I'm a leader. I know Carrie's a leader. And I know each of you who are listening are a leader at heart as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So say yes to yourself and move forward. Stop warding off wealth and start welcoming it instead.
Yeah, start warding it off and start welcoming it. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all this great wisdom and your beautiful heart and all your wisdom earned on your path and all the steps you've walked. Thank you so much for being who you are, Anjel. And if you guys love this, please share it out, like, subscribe, comment, so that the engines know this is important content, and share it out with somebody that could use this message today. And here come kisses, everybody. We love you. We'll see you later. You can join me if you want. Here come kisses, Reiki kisses for you too. Be blessed. Here they come. We love you so much. Have a great week, everyone. See you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now. If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, awake, show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar from the